Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let's continue on reading A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tillie. Poppy swallowed, then smiled. I smiled back. I love you. I translated into English just to make sure she completely understood. Her face grew serious once more, and she moved to sit up in the middle of the bed. Reaching for my hand, she pulled me to sit opposite her. Her hands dropped to the bottom of my shirt. Taking in a stuttering breath, she pulled it up and over my head. I closed my eyes and felt a warm kiss on my chest. I opened my eyes again to see Poppy giving me a shy smile. I melted at the nervous look on her face. She'd never looked so beautiful. Trying to fight through my own nerves, I put my hand on her cheek. We don't have to do this, Poppy. Just because I'm leaving, you don't need to do this for me. I'll be coming back. I'll make sure of it. I want to wait until you're ready. I'm ready, Rune, she said, her voice clear and steady. You think we're too young? We'll be 16 soon. I smiled. Hearing the fire in her voice, most people still think that's too young. Romeo and Juliet were around our age, she argued. I couldn't help but laugh. I stopped laughing when she edged closer and ran her hand down my chest. Rune, she whispered. I've been ready for some time. But I was happy to wait because we had all the time in the world. There was no rush. Now we don't have that luxury. Our time, this time, is limited. We believe, and I think you feel the same way about me. Yeah, I replied instantly. I love you. Forever, always. Poppy said on a sigh, then shifted away from me. Without breaking her eyes from mine, she lifted her hand to the strap of her nightdress and pushed it down. She did the same to the other strap, and the nightgown fell away to her hips. I froze. I couldn't move as Poppy sat in front of me, bared to me. Poppyman, I breathed, convinced I didn't deserve this girl, this moment. I moved closer until I towered right above her. I searched her eyes and asked, Are you sure, Poppyman? Poppy threaded her hand through mine, then brought our hands to her bare skin. Yes, Rune, I'm sure. I want this. I couldn't hold back any longer, so I let go and kissed her lips. We only had hours. I was going to spend them being with my girl in every possible way. Poppy moved her hand from mine and explored my chest with her fingers, never breaking from our kiss. I ran my fingers over her back, pushing her closer to me. She shivered under my touch. I dropped my hand to the hem of her dress at her thigh. My hand traveled upward until I worried I was going too far. Poppy broke away and rested her forehead on my shoulder. Keep going, she instructed, breathlessly. I did as she asked, swallowing the nerves building at my throat. Rune, she murmured. I closed my eyes at the sound of her sweet voice. I loved her so damn much. Because of that, I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want to be responsible for pushing her too far. I wanted her to feel special. I wanted her to understand that she was my world. We stayed like this for a minute, locked in the moment, breathing, waiting for whatever came next. Then Poppy's hand drifted to the button on my jeans and I opened my eyes. She was studying me closely. Is this okay? She asked cautiously. I nodded, speechless. Taking her free hand, she guided me to undress her until all our clothes had been shed onto the floor. Poppy sat quietly before me, her hands fidgeting on her lap. Her long brown hair was flowing over one of her shoulders, and her cheeks were flushed with red. I'd never seen her so nervous. I'd never been so nervous. Reaching out my hand, I ran my finger down her hot cheek. At my touch, Poppy's eyes fluttered up, and a shy smile pulling on her lips. I love you, Poppyman, I whispered. A soft sigh escaped her mouth. I love you too, Rune. Poppy's fingers wrapped around my wrist, and she carefully lay back on the bed, guiding me forward until I was beside her, my torso moving to cover hers. Leaning in, I peppered soft kisses over her flushed cheeks and forehead, ending in a long kiss on her warm mouth. Poppy's shaking hand pushed into my hair and pulled me closer. It felt like only seconds later when Poppy shifted beneath me, breaking the kiss. She placed her palm on my cheek and said, "I'm ready." Nuzzling my face into her hand, I kissed the fingers resting on my cheek and absorbed her words. Poppy leaned over to the side and took something from the drawer of her nightstand. When she handed me the small package she'd retrieved, I fought back a sudden rush of nerves. I stared at Poppy and her cheeks flushed in embarrassment. I knew this day would come soon, Rune. I wanted to make sure we were prepared. I kissed my girl until I built up the nerve to do this. It didn't take long, with Poppy's touch calming the storm inside until I knew I was ready. Poppy opened her arms, guiding me above her. My mouth fused with hers, and for the longest time, I simply kissed her. I tasted the cherry lip balm on her lips, loving the feeling of her warm bare skin pressing against mine. I pulled back for air. I met Poppy's gaze, and she nodded her head. I could see on her face how much she wanted me. As I wanted her, I kept my eyes locked on hers, and I did not break away once, not for a single second. Afterward, I held her in my arms. We faced each other as we lay under the covers. Poppy's skin was warm to the touch, and her breathing was slowing back to its normal rhythm. Our fingers were linked on the pillow we now shared, our grips tight, hands slightly trembling. Neither of us had spoken yet. As I studied Poppy, watching every move I made, I prayed that she didn't regret what we'd done. I watched her swallow deeply, and she drew in a slow breath. When she exhaled, she dipped her eyes to our clasped hands. As slowly as possible, she ran her lips over our entwined fingers. I stilled. "Poppyman," I said, and her eyes lifted up. A long strand of her hair had fallen over her cheek, and I gently pushed it back, tucking it behind her ear. She still hadn't said anything. Needing her to know what we'd share had meant to me, I whispered, "I love you so much. What we just did, being with you like that." I trailed off, unsure how to express what I wanted to say. She didn't respond, and my stomach rolled, fearing I'd done something wrong. As my eyes closed in frustration, I felt Poppy's forehead against mine, and her lips whisper kisses onto my mouth. I shifted until we were as close as we could possibly get. "I'll remember this night for the rest of my life," she confided, and the fear I felt was pushed far from my mind. I blinked my eyes open and tightened my hold around her waist. Was it special for you, Poppyman? As special as it was for me?" Poppy smiled, a smile so wide that the sight stole my breath. As special can be. She softly replied, echoing the words she said to me when we were 8 years old, and I kissed her for the first time. Unable to do anything else, I kissed her with everything I had, pouring out all of my love into the kiss. When we broke apart, Poppy squeezed my hand, and tears built in her eyes. Kiss 355 with my room in my bedroom. After we made love for the first time. Taking my hand, she laid it on her chest, directly over her heart. I could feel its heavy beats under my palm. I smiled. I knew her tears were tears of happiness, not sadness. It was so special that my heart almost burst. She added with a smile, "Poppy," I whispered, feeling my chest tighten. Poppy's smile fell, and I watched as her tears began falling to her pillow. "I don't want you to leave me," she said brokenly. I couldn't stand the pain in her voice, or the fact that these tears were now sad ones. "I don't want to go," I replied honestly. We didn't say anything else, because there was nothing more to say. I combed Poppy's hair through my fingers, while she ran her fingertips up and down my chest. It wasn't long before Poppy's breathing had evened out, and her hand had stilled on my skin. The rhythm of her steady breathing lulled my eyes to a close. I tried to stay awake as long as possible, to savor the time I had left, but before long, I drifted to sleep, a bittersweet mixture of happiness and sadness flowing through my veins. It seemed like I had only just closed my eyes when I felt the rising sun's warmth kissing my face. I blinked until I opened my eyes, seeing a new day breaking through Poppy's window. The day I was leaving. My gut clenched when I saw the time. I was leaving in an hour. When I glanced at Poppy, sleeping over my chest, I thought she'd never looked more beautiful. Her skin was flushed from the heat of our bodies, and I smiled on seeing our hands still joined on my stomach. Suddenly, nerves flooded through me when I thought of the night before. She looked so contented as she slept. My biggest fear was that she would wake and regret what we'd done. I wanted her so badly to love what we had done as much as I did. I wanted the image of us together to be as ingrained in her memory as it would be in mine. As if feeling my heavy stare, Poppy slowly opened her eyes. I watched as the recollection of the night before flashed across her face. Her eyes widened as she took in our bodies, our hand. My heart skipped a beat in a trepidation. But then a beautiful slow smile spread across her face. Seeing this, I shifted closer to her. Poppy buried her head in my neck as I wrapped her in my arms. I held her close for as long as I possibly could. When I finally lifted my head and checked the clock again, the anger from yesterday came crashing back. "Poppyman," I whispered, hearing the strained anger in my graveled voice. I have to go. Poppy stiffened in my arms. When she shifted back, her cheeks were wet. I know. I felt tears hitting my cheek too. Poppy gently wiped them away. I caught her hand and laid a single kiss on the center of her palm. I stayed for a couple more minutes, drinking in every inch of Poppy's face, before forcing myself to leave the bed and get dressed. Without looking back, I slid through the window and ran across the grass, feeling my heart tear with every single step. I climbed through my window. My bedroom door had been unlocked from the outside. My papa stood near the bed. For a brief moment, my stomach turned at the fact that I'd been caught, but then the fury flared within me, and I lifted my chin, daring to him to say something, anything. I welcomed the fight. I wouldn't let him shame me for spending the night with the girl I loved, the one he was ripping me away from. He turned and walked away without saying a word. 30 minutes passed in a flash. I cast a glance over my room one last time. Lifting my backpack, I swung it over my shoulder and walked outside, my camera hanging around my neck. Mr. and Mrs. Litchfield were already on our driveway, standing with Ida and Savannah, hugging my parents with their goodbyes. Seeing me walk out the door, they met me at the bottom of the steps and hugged me goodbye too. Ida and Savannah ran to me and threw themselves around my waist. I ruffled the hair on their heads. When they stepped aside, I heard a door being opened. I lifted my eyes and saw Poppy running. She had wet hair, clearly having just showered, but she looked more beautiful than ever before as she sprinted to where we all stood, only me in her sights. When she arrived on our driveway, she stopped briefly to hug my parents and kiss Alton goodbye. Then she turned to face me. My parents got into the car, and Poppy's parents and sisters moved back toward their house, giving us some space. I wasted no time holding out my arms, and Poppy ran into my chest. I squeezed her tight, inhaling the sweet scent from her hair. I put my finger under her chin and tilted her head up, and then I kissed her for the final time. I kissed her with as much love as I could find inside my heart. When I broke away, Poppy spoke through streaming tears. Kiss number 356. With my ruin on his driveway. When he left me. I closed my eyes. I couldn't stand the pain she was in. That I was in too. "Son," I looked over Poppy's shoulder at my papa. "We have to go," he said apologetically. Poppy's hands tightened on my shirt. Her big green eyes were shining with tears, and it seemed like she was trying to memorize every part of my face. Finally releasing my hold on her, I raised my camera and pressed the button. I captured this rare moment, the exact moment when someone's heart broke. I walked to the car, my feet feeling like ton weights. As I climbed in the back seat, I didn't even try to stop my tears. I watched Poppy standing to the side of our car, her damp hair blowing in the breeze, watching me leave, waving goodbye. My papa started the engine. I opened my window. I held out my hand and Poppy took hold of it. As I gazed into her face one last time, she said, "I'll see you in my dreams. I'll see you in my dreams." I whispered back and reluctantly let go of her hand as my papa drove the car away. I stared back at Poppy through the rear window, watching her wave until she was out of sight. I held on to the memory of that wave goodbye. I vowed to hold on to it until that wave welcomed me home again, until it once again stood for hello. We'll leave it off for this video, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye for now.